morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to all of our attendees that are joining us from around the world. Today's broadcast of Invisible Women in Sport is an Institute for Sport and Social Justice production. I'm your producer, Garnett Overby III. All guests will be muted during this production, but I encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions or leave a comment. We will reserve time at the end to answer a few questions. So now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our host, Taylor Middleton.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 12 of Invisible Women in Sports. I am your host, Taylor Middleton, and today I am joined with Noveen Moinpour. I'm Director of Marketing and Event Management for the PAC-12. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I told you, like any of our other shows, we always do an icebreaker. We have not done Two Truths and a Lie in a while. So this is just a way to get everybody together in the chat as well and interactive. So we will start. I will go first and then you will go after me with Two Truths and a Lie. And for anybody in the chat, you can put down there what you believe is the lie. So for my Two Truths and a Lie, I didn't get my driver's license till I was a sophomore in college. I played the French horn and I have traveled twice outside of the country. So anybody can guess what you think is the lie.
I feel like you've played the French horn. Should I guess?
Yes, you can guess.
I'm going to say you've only been out of the country twice is the lie.
Okay. There's a bunch coming in. So there was a lot of people saying the French horn. I did play the French horn in 4th grade. I didn't want to. I wanted to play the saxophone, but they wouldn't let me. So I did play the French horn. And the lie was that I didn't travel outside the country twice. It's just been one time. And it was my senior year of high school. So
where'd you go?
I went to Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands.
Whoa.
Like the school I was at, they had like an immersion trip. So it was like a project and we were traveling. It was like 2.5-ish weeks. So yeah, we did a lot of stuff there with like the Derwin scientist stuff and all of that. So
it's a great place for your only time out of the country.
Exactly. So those are mine. So now we're going to do yours and just see what people think.
All right. I drove a red bug with black spots. All the immediate members of my family attended and worked at a Pac-12 university. And my first date with my fiance was a trip to Las Vegas.
Okay. I can see the car. I'm going to go with the second one.
With no, that's true.
Oh, wow. So
my parents, so I went to UCLA and I obviously, I worked as a director of operations for the softball team. And then obviously I'm with the Pac-12 now. My parents, they told me this after I worked in sports for like 5 years, that they both did their master's programs at University of Washington. And at the time, my dad was laying out sod for the football team and my mom was in the cafeteria as their student worker jobs. And then my dad also is an adjunct professor at University of Arizona from time to time.
Oh, wow.
So the lie is the first date. It was actually my 4th date with my fiance. It was in Vegas.
Okay. Well, that was a great way to start. So we're going to go ahead and get ready. So we both know that you did go to UCLA. However, we also know that you have a little bit of a theater background. So outside of theater, what were the other hobbies that you did growing up?
Yeah, so growing up, I was always interested in sports. I played soccer and I played field hockey. I was like semi-good at field hockey in high school, almost recruited. But I also played piano. My family likes to travel a lot. And so we were always traveling in the summers. I love to dance. So I used to do like Persian dance lessons. I used to do Persian language classes. So lots of hobbies growing up. I'm an only child, so I had to keep myself very busy. But a wide array of different hobbies that I like to do. I'm very crafty as well, and that's kind of come into my life now, but I think it was ingrained in me at a young age.
Right. So you talked about doing those hobbies and we know you did theater. So what was it that kind of made you go into that lane of theater through high school and into college to study at UCLA?
Yeah, so I grew up with my cousin. My cousin was like my older sister. She was always a performer. So I would always go with her to rehearsals. I would always go with her to her different performances and things like that. So I always saw performance in my life. And then when I got into high school, I started getting involved in the theater classes, and I took it as like on a whim. I had a really, really impactful teacher, and she was the reason why I ended up majoring in theater, studying theater, and going into that career as my passion. She ingrained in me a lot of different skills of like time management, how to work with different people, how to be integral, like how to have integrity, discipline, all that kind of stuff. So she was a huge role model of mine, and she showed me that you can have a career in this and really build a life off of the arts. So my experience with her, and then different summer camps and different experiences like that, I was like, I think I can make a job out of this, which ironically I didn't stick to, but led me onto a path of knowing kind of what else was out there in terms of career goals.
Gotcha. So then when you got to UCLA, how was that transition going into theater for you?
Yeah, it was different. I had never been in such a focused environment with people who were like, they had come to do theater. I don't know if people know this, but like for theater, it's just like athletics. Is you do a separate application, you have an audition, there's like a different level of commitment. I went to conservatory style school, so you're in rehearsals all day long. You're expected to commit to that program. You put in all your hours, and at the end of the day, our labs are basically our rehearsals. Our labs are kind of like doing the performances, like practice into your game time. But I'd never been around such a focused group and a diverse group of people. There's so many different kinds of people in the theater, whether you're a performer, whether you're behind the scenes, if you're a lighting designer, there's just so many elements, and there's room for everybody at the table. But what I missed was that there is a team environment, but I missed the competition of sport. So I would go to UCLA soccer games and go to UCLA football games, and I was like, I want to be a part of this more. Like, how else can I get involved? So my spring quarter of my freshman year, I started volunteering with the equipment room, and I got my foot in the door in the equipment room. Lots of laundry loops, a stinky situation, but it led me into what is now my career today. I kind of took that position, became the student manager for the softball team the next season, a sport that I was completely unfamiliar with, but I got into it not knowing the legacy, the tradition, the history of UCLA softball, really dove into that program. And then, again, the rest is history. I stayed on for another 3 years as a director of operations, won a championship with them, and that led me into my career in sports today.
Right. And after we had our conversation the other day, you kind of talked about your little like kind of grace period you had before you went into working with the Pac-12 as well. So can you talk about what that was like and kind of what you learned from that job that you worked in that at that time?
Yeah, so I basically, I was with this UCLA softball team for about 6 seasons total, 3 as a student, 3 afterwards. I graduated and I was like, okay, what's next? What am I going to do? And I got a call from Coach I, awesome head coach of the softball team, national champions, gotta keep plugging that. But she said, hey, I got a job for you. Are you interested? I said, absolutely. Obviously had a great run there. Everything about that team environment was incredible for me. And then I basically started building my network. That's really where networking and relationships started launching for me. I was starting to meet more alumni. I was starting to meet more parents, people that are involved in the department as a whole. And that led me to my next job with Easton Bell Sports. And so I was working, basically got an opportunity from a former UCLA Bruin who was moving up in the world. She took me on with her, said, hey, I got a person for you that's fit for this role. You should bring her on. So I went to Easton for about a year, which is the company that sponsors UCLA softball. I was in the good space for the first time, the product space for the first time. And it was something I didn't really enjoy. I learned that I am not a clock in, clock out kind of employee. I am not somebody who likes to leave my desk at the end of the day and the job is over. I like to be needed. I like to be on call. I like to have people who thrive off of problem solving and things like that. And so that role kind of naturally came to an end. They went through restructure and I got laid off. And I was really young. It's the first time I was like really hit with adversity. For the first time I was like unemployed, didn't know what that felt like. I was like, oh my God, is my life over? Do I change my entire career? Is this the wrong thing for me? But it really allowed me to hone in on who I am, what my skills are, and where I could apply those later. So I, started applying. I think unemployed for like 2 months. So in the grand scheme of life, it was like a blip, but it felt like eternity for me as someone who's constantly hardworking and wants to, shine everywhere they are. But it gave me the opportunity to really say, hey, I have this theater background. I have the sports passion. How can I bring those two things together? And I was applying, and I found, obviously got really lucky and got in with the Pac-12 networks on the media side of things. And I came back to the Bay Area where my family is. And I think that's really where it solidified, like, I'm going to be working in sports probably for a very long time. So it was the first time I had married together. Like I had that like light bulb click that theater and sports, and my experience in both of those has so many transferable skills that I had never really applied before.
Right. Can you talk about some of those skills once you got to the Pac-12 and like your favorite parts of it, being there as long as you?
Yeah. So I've been in two different roles with the Pac-12. I was on the media side of things with Pac-12 networks. So I was in broadcast operations, and that was a really technical role. It was a lot more, it felt like my stage manager days. It was bringing together technical specs and crews and kind of being the hub of information on every single broadcast that would take place on our 12 universities. So I oversaw 4 of them, but it felt like, we were making tech books and we're putting in all the information on how to, broadcast a game. And it felt like a script. It felt like a script for theater. And I think now in my role even more, I'm bringing in all of that, my theater background into the forefront today. It's ironic because I'm now calling shows from time to time. I'm able to use both my left and right brain. I'm extremely organized, and I love like bringing all the things together. And so that's my stage manager roots. That's really what that is. It's bringing talent, it's bringing logistics, it's bringing operations, it's bringing, everything together to make sure that either an event runs smoothly or a campaign runs smoothly. And I think those are the roots that I came from. Is kind of, I always call myself an octopus. I'm the head, and all the tentacles are around me. And so I think that's, there's direct correlations. Your team is your actors, your coach is your student, is your director, your ancillary support staff is your lighting designers and your tech producers and things like that. So there's like very, very direct correlations. And then it's just managing different kind of personalities.
Of course. And that's like in any role. We talk about that in my class right now for grad school. And even with that too, like, how is it for you being a marketer and branding management for all of this in the middle of what we have now is the pandemic? Also, we just got the new NIL for athletes, and as well as the new social initiatives that have come up in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I think it's been a huge opportunity. I mean, in the sad things that took place last year, we found a window of opportunity in a space to have some pretty hard conversations, to create a stronger culture within, I think, internally at the Pac-12 and with our member institutions. We were able to, amplify our student athlete voices in a new way. I think there was a little bit of, we're kind of always in this cycle of games and championships and ticket sales and things like that. And there was a little bit of a pause where sadly we didn't have fans in the stands, but we were able to focus in on our people, on our student athletes, on our coaches. And we found, and I honestly hope that the momentum continues. I want to keep the as one of my colleagues says, is keep the pressure on the gas pedal and keep it going, because it's a marathon, not a sprint. So this year has been really interesting, is kind of taking some of your normal job functions and putting them on a back burner and finding other ways to become impactful, other ways to, focus on different business objectives. I think our role as marketers in our team, it was ironic. We were actually writing COVID protocols. We were writing like, how often do you have to sanitize a ball? How far do you have to be from the court for every single sport that we sponsor at the Pac-12? So in this time, there's been new ways that we've been called upon to utilize our expertise and bring them to the forefront. And then the other thing that I thought was really awesome is that this year, we amplifying our student athlete voices and dedicating space and time for those moments. If our student athletes wanted to be active, if they wanted to be vocal. So we kind of carved out in our pregame shows and our pregame timelines a moment of solidarity for all sports if they wanted it. We showcased if there was any kind of social justice moments or patches or whatever our teams did, we were really, really quick to make sure that we amplified them. And then we also dedicated our brand spot this year as a Pac-12 to our student athletes on social justice and anti-racism. So that spot's usually showcasing, our campuses, how great it is to be a champion, what it means to go to one of our schools. And this year it was, hey, we don't want you to be a hater. Please, we want you to be somebody who we want to be a part of and associate with. And it was from the voice of our student athletes directly, which I thought was really powerful and ran nationwide.
Right. And you talked about some of those spaces. So can you just kind of go into more detail about those spaces that were created, not only for the athletes, but also just within the Pac-12 and some of those initiatives that you're a part of?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of momentum, and it's kind of awesome to see that it's happened. And I keep saying there's been space made. I think there's been time made, there's been space made. So our campuses obviously are doing an incredible job in supporting the student athletes, but I think I give a lot of credit to our leadership and the people within the Pac-12 conference and networks, because in this year we've, I think, bonded more than ever. I mean, with the power of Zoom and the power of being able to log on, we've done things as casual as Pac-12 trivia days, name that tune. If anyone wants to join in, they're really, really fun. But at the same time, we've also had educational sessions, accountability series to talk about and create space for our, Black brothers and sisters, our AAPI brothers and sisters, LGBTQIA. I was really, really honored to be a part of putting together all of our Black History Month initiatives, both internally and externally as an ally. We started a women's ERG, we started a LGBTQ ARG. So just a lot of good momentum. And I think people are really starting to be seen as who they are.
Right. So then even with that, talking about those spaces, looking at you at first, people may not know, but you are a first gen Iranian American. So can you talk about that experience for you, just personally, and then also in a workspace?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is there's not a lot of representation for Iranian American women in sports. I think the handful that I know are either reporters or coaches. So there's not a lot of people in the business of sport. And if I don't know them, that's on me. So I don't want to say that there aren't any, but what's been a challenge for me is that I pass as white. And so if you see me, you don't necessarily know that I have an immigrant background. I have a very immigrant mentality. My parents are first generation immigrants from Iran.
Right.
And I'm in a space that really they never knew that existed. They never knew was an opportunity for me. Not only as a woman, but a woman of color. I don't identify myself as a white woman. I may look like one. But it's been really interesting because this year there's been a lot more curiosity, a lot more, hey, Noveen Moinpour, that doesn't look like you look one way, but your name says that there's more to you.
Mm-hmm.
And just having those conversations and educating people as to what Iranian American is. We used to kind of caveat with the word Persian because there was such a bad stigma about the country of Iran. Mm-hmm. And now I've been really deliberate in saying, no, I'm Iranian American. I come from the country of Iran. My parents are from Iran. I'm 100%. I speak, read, and write. Right. And so and I have a lot of support around me. In my family, they are my biggest cheerleaders. And then within my department as well, there's a lot of understanding, a lot of space, and a lot of hey, I'm curious, tell me more. What does this really mean for you?
Right.
So that's just been my experience.
And even with that, that's just knowing that you could get more comfortable expressing who you are and not having to hide that. We talked about it, even with a lot of Chinese, Asian kids that come around, they'll give themselves very American names because people can't pronounce them or people may not take the time to try to learn. And just knowing that it's important to celebrate that diversity and it's okay to have that. So, even going through those obstacles, you talk about your support. So can you kind of just talk about that support system and how they've helped you, whether it was your family or just in that workspace as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think the reason why I am the person I am is because of the people that I'm surrounded by. I have incredible parents. They are the stars of my life. I'm going to get emotional because I love them so much. But there was never a question of like why or no, or like, why are you doing this? Just whatever you want to do, be the best at it. We will support you 100%, but be the best at which you can be. And then I've always had really great managers. I've always had people that support me and will encourage me and cheer me on and help me grow. And I think that's super, super powerful. And that's a testament to, I also have 2 female bosses. And so I am really, really inspired by them every single day. And they help me grow. I think, I've had male bosses as well, but I think the difference is that there's always been support. I haven't had a really hard situation where the person that manages me is not good. But I thrive in that kind of environment. And I think for me, it's the relationships that I build. I'm somebody who wants trust. I'm somebody who wants loyalty, and I'm somebody who will put my neck out for you if you do the same for me. So I think I exude that kind of energy and that kind of atmosphere. And so wherever I go, I want to create positive environments, and I want other people to feel just as supported as I've always felt.
Right. And I think that's great just to have those spaces and have those things, because you don't always hear how this perspective is from an ally's lens.
Yeah.
And being, if you're like directly in that, like me as a Black woman, I wouldn't know how hard or maybe what it's like for you to try to support me in my endeavors. So I think it's really important that we just take any support, a lot of the genuine support that we can get. So speaking through all of those things, like how has it made you feel seeing the buy-in from the Pac-12, like from the top down, for you working at that level?
I mean, as an employee, and like we always say it, we're like a family, but as an employee, it makes me really proud to work where I do. It makes me very proud that I am allowed to have these spaces and be able to have these kinds of dialogues and be able to create that kind of environment for my colleagues, for some other young women that are coming up. Be able to look back and say, hey, there's room for you here. There's room for you at the Pac-12, in sport, wherever you are. I think it's just incredible that there's room and there's space and there's want right now. I think that's really powerful. And just, I mean, this series alone is shedding a light and shining a light on the people that, don't always, not always had the light shines on them, but at the same time, there's like, I think the momentum is really, really good right now. And I think that it's really important. And for the Pac-12, I think it's the leadership and the initiative that we're taking is powerful. It's impactful. And every once in a while, we have to remind ourselves that, because when you're in the thick of it, you're kind of just going through it and you're like, man, things are either hard or stressful, or, there's just a lot going on, or it could be better. When you sit back and you reflect and you look at it, there's the utmost support. There's empowerment for women, there's change for women, there's space at the table for everybody. And I think that's something that I really, really value in where I work. And that's why I've been here for such a long time. There's always opportunity. And I think even if my potential doesn't grow vertically, there's such a wide range. And I think people always need to keep that in mind.
Well, thank you so much. I know our audience is very happy for you to be here. There's a lot of comments in the chat box, but thank you again. And also, I'm coming up on my last question. So if anyone in the audience has questions, please drop them in the chat for our Q&A afterwards. So again, Noveen, you've been through so much, going from theater back to sport, but also still implementing that into your sports on a daily scale. So what is just some advice you could give to women looking to go into this industry or just trying to get their foot in the door?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things for any person trying to get in these days is be a solution. Identify the issue and be the solution. People are looking for problem solvers. And as selfish as it sounds, any employee or employer is looking for how you're going to make things better for me, how you're going to impact the team. And I think energy and effort, I had a coach, UCLA softball coach, Sue Enquist, the only thing you can control is your effort and your attitude. So if you give 100%, 110% of your effort and you have the best attitude, it's going to shine. And people want to be around positive people. If you're negative Nancy, people aren't going to want to be around you. No offense to any Nancys out there, but I think there's a lot of power in positivity and a lot of power in that energy you can bring to others.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today and just giving us a great positive aspect on your journey through sport and in the industry. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Garnett for our Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor.
Noveen, thank you so much. Your energy is just infectious. I'm just like over here like this big ball of energy right now. So it is so great to have you here with us today. We do have a few questions. I have a question since I have the microphone. I'd like to ask my question first. We got a chance to speak with you yesterday, and you talked a lot with us about how your and I'm reading from my notes, your external existence doesn't necessarily match your internal mindset. And you were talking about being an Iranian woman in this space where you're a lot of times the only one. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that? You know, how you have overcome some of those struggles and challenges, because it's obvious you're doing a phenomenal job with the Pac-12.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I used to not identify myself as an Iranian American woman. I always did, but I didn't know what that meant to me. And I think these days I've really leaned into myself and really been knowing who I am. I kind of look around me and I realize like there isn't anyone else like me. There isn't another Iranian American woman in my office. I've never met one at NACMA or at MOA or anything like that. Like I haven't met a lot of Middle Eastern women, even Middle Eastern women. And a lot of that it's just very interesting because there's a stigma, especially in the Iranian American community, about what roles and what jobs are what means success, right? Doctor, lawyer, dentist, some sort of trade. These days, tech is also cool, but there's a stigma as to what kinds of roles have and will receive approval. And I know this is a lot in a lot of other immigrant families as well. It's not unique just to the Iranian American family. But to have, again, that support from my family to say, no, it's okay for you to do whatever you want. It's okay for you to be a creative. It's okay for you to be an artist. It's okay for you to work in sports and entertainment. That validation goes a really long way. And never, hey, are you going to go back to law school? Or like, you can do this if you do that. I know a lot of my friends growing up, a lot of my Iranian friends growing up is like, they either took straight to that trade job, or it was, you can do what you're passionate about only if you get this secondary degree. And education is big in our family, in our community. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go back and get my master's in sport management, because then I'm going to become an expert in what my passion is and what my role has been. So I took that and I said, no, I'll show you that I'm committed to this. I'll show you that I can be the best at what I can be. But yeah, I still think that there's room. I hope that, there's a lot of young Iranian women now who want to get involved in sports. I oftentimes am at, different parties, either myself or my fiance is Indian. So same kind of stigmas in the Indian community of like, can you talk to my daughter? She wants to get into sports. Can you tell her that she's going to be like, it's not a good idea? I was like, excuse me. It's a great idea. We need more. And please allow your child to do whatever they want. So I had that support. I hope there's more parents out there. I hope our generation and our diverse generation is going to think of the gamut of career choices. And, there's not, typical or stereotypical roles that women are supposed to be into, and that we're not having conversations about, you shouldn't be working in this field, or that doesn't belong to you, or anything like that. So.
That is phenomenal. Thank you for saying that and sharing that part of your experience. It's important for people out there to hear that. and to be comfortable in their own skin and in their own space. So thank you for saying that. Jennifer Norton gave you a shout out. She said, Noveen is simply the best, and there's stars around the word best. It is an honor and pleasure to work with her. So Jennifer, thank you for your comment and joining us today. We have a question from Matt Edelson, and Matt is asking, can you talk about how the Pac-12 is handling marketing opportunities for student athletes given the recent NIL rulings?
Man, if I had a magic 8-ball or a silver ball, I'd be able to tell you all. But it's a wild world right now. There's a lot of changing landscape in the realm of college sports. We're in a unique position just because we do span over 6 states, sorry. And so every different, California, Washington, Oregon, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, 7 states. I don't know how to count anymore, you guys. But every state has their own rulings. And so from a league level, it becomes pretty challenging, but we're exploring, we're educating ourselves on some of the opportunities that we can have as a league to be able to support our member institutions. And they're doing some incredible work themselves. So I'm excited to see what comes next. It's a wild world out there.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to ask for your assistance on saying this name because I hate to get people's names wrong. So Arpan, how do you say Bajaj?
Oh, this is the fiance. Arpan Bajaj.
There you go. Okay, thank you. So he is asking his fiance, can you highlight how being a minority and women in the workplace has brought a new perspective and strength to lean on in overcoming challenges in the sports landscape? Now, I don't know if he prepped you on this question.
No, he did not. Oh, this is a hard question. I think the biggest thing is bringing a different lens to every situation. My experience brings a new lens to any kind of situation. I think that's one of the more one of the beautiful things about working in sport and working with such a diverse group of people is that when you have diversity of thought and when you have different perspectives around the table, you might hear something that you wouldn't think of yourself. And Taylor spoke about just the spaces, I think we're much more mindful these days as to what kinds of conversations we're having. We're more mindful as to who's in the room, and maybe I don't know your experience. And now you might not know mine. But again, with the Pac-12 and some of these opportunities that we've learned a little bit more about each other. So there's a little bit more understanding. And this shouldn't have to happen after what happened last year, right? I think these are the kinds of things that we hope to have in a culture, in a healthy culture, in a healthy work environment, and just in our homes, in our dialogues with our friends, and the lives that we live, is creating a space where people can feel comfortable sharing their opinions and have some healthy discourse, a little bit of a rumble, as my supervisor sometimes says, but a healthy discourse, right? Just because you disagree doesn't mean that you have to hate each other afterwards. It's hard. It's very challenging because people are very rooted in their opinions. But at the same time, it gives you a little bit of background as to how that person thinks and why that person thinks that way. I don't even know if I answered the question properly.
Awesome. Arpan, I think you're going to have another discussion later on, I'm sure, about putting your fiance on the spot. So I'll let you handle that one. But this question comes from, I hope I say the name correctly, Seema Harshimafar.
My family's coming in strong, you guys. My family is showing out today.
Did I say that name correctly?
Yeah, Hashemifar.
Okay, thank you. And she's saying, how do you regulate your emotions when you are faced with challenging situations?
This is actually something I consistently work on because I am definitely an emotional person. As you can tell, I skew very, very passionate in the positive way. And then I can also go the other way. I'm also a Gemini, so I get two sides. The duality is very real. But I would say is difficult situations is pausing and not reacting. That emotional intelligence of not just reacting immediately to a situation is let yourself sit with it If it's an email at the end of the night and you're like fired up, don't answer right away. Sit on it, sleep on it. The next morning, all of a sudden it's going to seem like, why was I so upset? Why was I so fired up about that? So I think instead of reacting is responding. So responding with grace, responding with emotional intelligence, responding with understanding where that person's coming from. And I think that's a lot of kind of this relationship building and the network that we work with is, what's that person's ultimate goal? What are they trying to succeed in? We're all trying to succeed in what we're trying to be successful at. So how can I help that person get what they want while I also am doing what I need to do? So everyone's trying to get to a certain goal. And I think if you're able to kind of understand where they're coming from, it's a little bit of being the bigger person as well. If you have to swallow some pride, if you have to swallow some of that ego and respond in the moment, not in the moment, respond, but don't react.
I like that. Respond, but don't react. So that's great advice. This question comes from our GA, Larissa Campallo. Larissa is asking, what advices would you give for international students or professionals to succeed in the sports industry here in the US?
It's a good one. That's a good one. I would say, make yourself known, get out there, find some opportunities. I think, there's a little bit of, maybe not hesitancy, but I can see where sometimes a language barrier is sometimes a deterrent or something like that. But the power of sport transcends all of that. International, that's why we work in this field. Sport transcends everything. Hard work in sport is gonna get you far. I think there's space at the table for everybody, no matter if you're someone who's domestic or international. The world of sport transcends globally. And so once again, different perspectives. What happens in a certain country may be different than what happens here. And that's another layer of information that someone might have experience about. I think some of the most incredible sporting events are the global sporting events, the Olympics. I'm working very heavily on the Tokyo Olympics coming up right now as a Pac-12 campaign. And it's really interesting working with not only the USOPC, but our student athletes are across the entire global footprint. It's not just Team USA. So there's space for everybody. I'm a big soccer fan, so all of the Euro Cup, all those kinds of events, the World Cup. There's just sport transcends all. So I think I personally have not worked with a ton of international students just because of what's happened in my footprint, but I did go to grad school with a ton of international students, and they're doing very, very successful things right now. And taking what you learn here back into your own country. I think that's also really, really powerful.
Awesome. Thank you for that. 2 more questions. This question comes from Ashley Adamson, and she's saying, this is awesome, Noveen. Just curious, in 10 years, where do you see yourself?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. I think I'm still gonna be working in the college space. I think I'm really passionate about collegiate athletics. I've actually really been interested in diversity and inclusion work. I'm really interested in what that landscape looks like for the future. Culture fit, culture work. I don't want to say HR because that's not where I want to go into, but I think how organizations and teams can work together with diverse backgrounds and create the environment. Some of the work that we've done this year, which is not in my marketing role, has been some of the most powerful and exciting work that I've done in my career. So I could see myself tying some of that in the future.
Awesome. The last question comes from me, and this is just a curiosity question because I'm from the West Coast. I love the Pac-12. It was Pac-10 when I was growing up, but now it's the Pac-12, so very familiar with it. But do you know how many countries are going to be represented by Pac-12 student athletes for this Olympics?
Oh my God, my team is gonna kill me for not knowing this off top.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I should know this, and it's in my email somewhere. And I wanna say something like 93?
Wow, 93?
No, that's a lie. That might be Olympians that are not on Team USA. Shoot, I'm gonna have to get back to you guys on this one because it's a lot and it's really good. It's
Yeah.
really good. We have a very global footprint in the Tokyo Olympics, and I'm super excited to cheer everybody on. I think we have 100. Oh my God, I'm gonna butcher this. You guys should have told me. I would have looked it up. I would have had the answers for you.
The question just came to me when you were talking about, the different countries. I was like, I wonder how many students are representing countries.
I'm gonna have to go back and find out. There's a
So,
lot. I can tell you that. It's not just Team USA. There's a lot of countries represented.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I just want to say, Noveen, thank you so much. The Pac-12 to me does such a phenomenal job with the student athlete experience, and I know that you're a part of that. And so I thank you for that, and continue to just keep up the good work. And we're here. Oh, we just had just one more question that came in.
Oh no, don't ask. No, that's my dad. My family's in the chat, you guys. This is embarrassing.
I'm a dad, so I can't overlook dads. So, Mr. Moinpour, I have your back. Okay.
Oh, it's a good question though.
So Dad is saying, with respect to diversity and inclusion, what advice do you have for older generation immigrants who might be having certain prejudices based on their upbringing or social settings?
You guys, how woke is my dad right now? He's asking how he can be better. No, they are, and I'll say this, to testament to my parents, they've been done a lot of learning this year. They've asked a lot of hard questions. They're asking a lot more about why things are the way that they are. We have some really interesting dinner table conversations. But I think keeping an open mind. I think it's keeping an open mind and not being so set in the ways of what your generation and the generations before you have instilled into you. It's very hard. It's very hard to undo something that's generations old. There's a lot of stigmas, a lot of prejudice, a lot of stereotyping that's deeply rooted in some of these cultures. And I think some of it just like easing into some of those hard conversations. I think everything comes from a level of education and understanding. The minute you meet somebody who might be a little bit different than you and you develop a personal relationship, you have a little bit more understanding as to their experience. How you can get yourself out there. I think traveling helps a lot. You're exposed to a lot of different things when you travel. We're going to take Taylor with us. But I also think that, education and being open-minded and trying new things, trying to understand. It's difficult. I understand that. But I think even asking the question is really important.
Awesome. Great. And Dad, thank you for the question as well. So again, Noveen, thank you so much. And I am going to pass it back to Taylor.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you here today. I know a lot of people were tuned in, and there were a lot of comments about how dope and great and how you are the best in our chat. So thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate having you and just hearing from you and your own experience that we have not had on the show before. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for what you guys are doing. This is incredible. I'm honored to be a part of this series, and good luck to the next women. This is going to be awesome.
Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and close out with our next group. So our previous guest, Brianna Vaughn, she just moved up to a new position with the Baltimore Ravens. So we just wanted to give a shout out to her. She is the manager of community relations there. So again, if any of you guys know Brianna, just like go send her a little congrats on LinkedIn if you can. But yeah, we just wanted to update you guys with her. And then also, please tune in on July 29th for our 13th episode, where I will be speaking with Lisa Campos, the athletic director at UTSA. I need to slow down a little bit. Again, we're going to be doing it at 2 p.m. as normal Eastern time. And please follow us on all our social media platforms at Institute SSJ. And thank you for that. Also, we thank you for all the support of Invisible Women in Sport. We are a nonprofit organization with other programs that impact various social justice issues. So please use the QR code to support us with a financial gift as we continue to change lives through the power of sport. I'm your host, Taylor Middleton, and thank you to our guest, Noveen Moinpour, for being with us today, our producer, Garnett L. Overby III, our senior advising consultant, Matt Edelson, our graduate assistants, Larissa Campello and Olivia Wiggins, and our blog writer, Kennedy Collins. And just a special thank you to everyone who supports Invisible Women in Sport again. If you ever miss an episode, you can again follow us at Institute SSJ on our social media platforms. We also post to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, where everything will be up to date with new episodes. And again, viewers, we need your feedback to make Invisible Women in Sport the best it can be. Following today's episode, you can receive a short survey. Please complete and submit it to us. We also are still getting a lot of inquiries about if we have connections to internships to any of our supporters or members who have internships available. Please send your information to our producer, Garnett Overby, at goverby@ucf.edu so we can send it out to people reaching out to us. Please tune in on July 29th for our 13th episode with Lisa and make sure to register. And I am your host for Invisible Women in Sports Zoomcast. See us now. Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you at the next episode.